Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to, I'm calling it Santoki Season 1, Episode 2 of the
Okay.
Rum Shot Diaries. We said we'd do a bi-weekly Rum Shot show for those who've contributed to the Patreon, to just kind of give them a kind of the week that was almost, or the 2 weeks that was in West Indies cricket, Santoki. And as ever, we always say it, you let West Indies cricket pause for any amount of time and you're going to have 100 news stories to talk about. But how you doing, Santoki?
Yeah, I'm good. As you said, we've got a lot to get through, and I'm liking the professional sound of Season 1, Episode 2, so we'll go with that. But Mash, we've got a special guest joining us today as well.
Yeah. And obviously those who are watching this, you can see that it's CEO Johnny Grave. And this is a weird one because when we started this podcast, what feels like moons and moons ago, Johnny was one of the first, if not the first, real name of any kind of importance to come on the show. So really honored that you're back with us, Johnny, to kind of just go through this whistle stop tour of the news in the Caribbean. How you doing, Johnny?
Yeah, all right, thanks, guys. Good to be on. Good to be able to update you on all the goings on. It's certainly extremely busy and has been for a while. And as you know, we're desperately trying to get as much cricket on as we can, as difficult and as challenging it is in these very uncertain times. But yeah, fingers crossed, all being well, we're about to enter what I think fans will hopefully think is a very exciting summer. For us, it's probably going to be reasonably stressful, but all good.
Yeah, and most definitely. And I'm going to give massive kudos to Cricket West Indies, because when the news dropped, about a week ago, maybe a week and a half ago, of the whole summer program for the men's team, the excitement, not just amongst West Indian fans, but almost like world cricket, to see, like, because it's rare, Johnny, to see a block of cricket like that in the Caribbean, and almost have the attention of the world game exclusively on what the West Indies are doing. So it's actually exciting to see tour after tour after tour and essentially non-stop cricket, if not, as you say, stressful. But Santoki, we wanted to delve into some of the issues around that. So I'll let you jump into the logistics of it all.
Yeah, so I guess firstly, South Africa are touring. It was initially meant to be held in Trinidad and Tobago. Obviously, unfortunately, COVID cases are rising there. What was the reasoning behind moving it to St. Lucia is a common question we've had on social media.
Well, I think that one of the frustrations I think we had as a management team is we'd worked so hard to put together an entire day-by-day calendar for all of 2020, 21 and 2022. And it got the board of directors to agree and approve every single venue. And that for us was going to be a game changer in terms of how we plan, how fans can get certainty on opposition, on venues, on match timings. We could go on sale for tickets years in advance, build membership programs, and also say to regional governments that there was no politics anymore in how games were being allocated. You know, you've got an international stadium, you've invested in that. You're part of the West Indies. We want our fans to go and have the opportunity at least every year to within their home countries watch and follow the men's and women's game. And then COVID came, and we unfortunately couldn't announce that whole 3-year schedule effectively. So to be able to do it now has been a bit of a relief, as you say, Santoki. Although we'd never announced Trinidad, news spreads, and we were deep in negotiations with the Trinidad government, along with our partners in Trinidad, obviously the Trinidad and Tobago Cricket Board. And we'd actually had full government approval to host the whole South Africa tour there, which, from a management point of view was an obvious next step in terms of what we continue to refer to as managing risk. We knew that having a whole tour in one country was easier to manage and safer to manage. Having 2 internationally accredited stadium in Queen's Park Oval and Brian Lara Cricket Academy, similar to how we'd managed in the end the Sri Lanka tour in March in Antigua, and the fact that Trinidad had successfully hosted biosecure cricket in the CPL in 2020, it just made a lot of sense to start what is a really important summer, and still having to navigate COVID. Trinidad made a lot of sense. It then transpired that because of the new strain in Trinidad and the sort of spike in cases, that wasn't going to be possible. And whilst the Trinidad and Tobago government never changed their stance, the CMO basically said that, I cannot relax or change any quarantine rules for the cricketers. They've got to follow very strictly now all arrival protocols, whether they're in a bio bubble or not. And unfortunately, because of that whole summer of cricket, we don't have a spare day. So teams being in room lockdown, particularly in Trinidad as well, where they did 7 weeks in the Hilton for CPL, many of our players. The thought for them to have to go back into room isolation for potentially 14 days, we would have then had to have extended the time for training and preparing the teams before playing the first games, and effectively would have started to lose matches. So, we very quickly, I think within 8 days, we'd re-put together the entire schedule for South Africa, involving ministries of health, ministries of sport, ministries of tourism, our board of directors, and the stadiums and territorial boards and local associations. So it was a mammoth task operationally and medically, but it really helped that St. Lucia was one of the venues we were hoping to take the Sri Lanka tour to. So we'd already had those discussions around Sri Lanka going to St. Lucia. So some of those relationships and conversations and detailed medical protocols had been understood and already poured over by the Ministry of Health. So, and it also helped that the T10 local leagues that are happening in both Grenada and St. Lucia meant that there was cricket being played. The stadiums were in, working order, and the wickets were already prepared. So it sort of ticked a lot of the cricket boxes. And then from a COVID perspective, very low cases. And again, one of the other challenges we have is obviously you need the opposition to travel, and that's become increasingly challenging, particularly for players and bio bubbles who have, many of them have gone from bubble to bubble, haven't spent much time at home. So the thought of going to a bit like Antigua, where they're in a beach resort, it's easier to get outside space. You're not confined to the room. It doesn't feel as constricted. St. Lucia and Grenada offer and afford that more than a hotel in Port of Spain. So I think in the end, it's probably helped us, and certainly the situation in Trinidad, unfortunately, hasn't got any better. So I think the decision to move the tour was the correct one, and we're very grateful for the support that we've had from St. Lucia and Grenada. Have been fantastic around trying to facilitate this really important tour to kickstart what's going to be really an unprecedented summer of cricket for our men and hopefully also for our women's team.
Thank you for the answers there, Johnny. And then I guess looking forward to the Aussies and Pakistan when they come as well, I was slightly surprised. I mean, I'm happy, but I was slightly surprised to see Guyana and Jamaica get matches later on in the season. Now, obviously, one of the kind of key things in West Indies cricket, like you say, is spreading the cricket around the region. But is it a case of is it a case of that Cricket West Indies essentially are more hopeful that by late July, when the Pakistan tour is, that we're able to go to other countries? And because that Pakistan tour is Barbados, Guyana, and Jamaica. Do you see what I mean? Or is there a case of, is it increasing risk to have three countries in one series?
Short answer is yes. I think in terms of our thinking, we wanted to, as much as we could, maintain the philosophy of spreading cricket around the region. And that's because we don't really want any of our international venues to go too long without hosting international cricket. We don't want our host boards to go too long without the opportunity to help, manage and run the cricket on the ground in terms of their experience and development. And also from a cricket perspective, we know that the enormous challenge and stress we put the ground staff at the Sir Viv Richards Stadium and Coolidge Cricket Ground here in Antigua after, where we are very demanding now on the pitches that are produced, and we have, and the ICC have, very high standards to be met, and therefore it's not really fair to necessarily go to these venues and completely sort of decimate all the squares and wickets that then lead an awful lot of post cricket work going on them before they're ready to go again. So That definitely is a factor. I think also a factor is, yes, of course, we're trying to remain optimistic that protocols and quarantines will relax by the time we're getting into August. I think also we're making a big push to get everyone vaccinated. We can't mandate that, but we are very much, as strongly as we possibly can, encouraging everyone to get vaccinated, not just our staff and players, but also people within the region. And we're hopeful, therefore, that it's ambitious, but at the same time, it would be great if we can get there, because we still really want to host a women's regional tournament in Guyana. So having those matches, international matches at Providence beforehand, will help in that respect. We're also, 2022, when you look at it, is probably even busier, believe it or not. And we've got a really important ICC global event in the Under-19 World Cup. So for all those reasons, I think it made sense. And the challenge that we're going to have, and the only way we could get so much cricket into the Caribbean, as well as that revised 2020 tour with South Africa, was effectively we're overlapping. So we'll be in Grenada, and then on the 28th of June, the Australians will arrive into St. Lucia. We'll be playing and preparing for the second one-day international in Barbados against Australia, and Pakistan will arrive into Barbados. And again, that arrival is very much on logistics. They're in Manchester playing England at Old Trafford. There's a Virgin Atlantic flight that goes from Manchester to Barbados, but nowhere else in the Caribbean. So it made sense to bring them in and logistically do it all in Barbados while the TV crew and everything are there. So it's it's a interesting puzzle and jigsaw that we're building. But whether we can pull it all off as we've announced, we've obviously now caveat everything we say with disclaimers around subject to government approval, subject to COVID-19, and subject to everything. But with a fair wind and best intentions, that's certainly what we're planning and hoping we can do.
You made reference to the women's competition that you want to run, but I guess the domestic season in general, in a normal year, non-COVID, we would have had a 10-round, if less or more, first-class season by now. The last I heard on it, Johnny, was it's not postponed, but it's certainly on hiatus at the moment. But the last kind of inklings I was hearing out of the Caribbean was thinking about countries play, so like within a Jamaican context, the best, like the Jamaican team versus the best of the rest within Jamaica, then so on and so forth in Trinidad, and so on and so forth. Is there a chance of a proper first class competition happening, do you reckon?
It's a good question. I think we quickly understood, I think, that we weren't going to be able to have what I would refer to as sort of bilateral 4-day cricket going on within the region, as we normally would have had, even if it was only 5 rounds rather than 10. Certainly our original thinking was trying to have that reduced Super 50 of the 6 regional teams only, then go into sort of maybe just a 1-round 4-day competition. We then thought actually the risk and complexities of moving people around the region wouldn't allow for that. Therefore, maybe let's look to bring in, like we do for Super 50, all the teams into one country and play across 3 venues. But really, again, the quarantine requirements, both entering a country and then going home, meant for 3 weeks of cricket, you were probably going to be in quarantine for a month. And it just didn't make sense either for the cricketers and then or really for the competition. And then when you start to think about players going into inactivity for quarantine, they then need to be able to train and load up, as the sports science and medicine guys would say, before they can bowl, particularly in 4-day cricket. So you're then looking at 2 weeks of training, then 3 weeks of action, then 2 weeks of quarantine home. It sort of became, almost, just not viable from that perspective, as well as then saying, well, one of the reasons we're doing it and prioritizing is to prepare our test players. And therefore, if it's then eating into that's happening at the same time as test matches, are we really achieving our aim? So in the short term, we've gone with a camp in St. Lucia, and the players arrived last weekend. They've so far all tested negative, which is great, and about to start training this weekend, and that will involve 2 inter-squad games. So, what we've done really with COVID is, we had 2 warm-up games at Old Trafford before the Test series against England. We took that concept into New Zealand and played 2 warm-up games against New Zealand, but added this concept where the A team could play alongside the men. We then had a best v best game after the Super 50 before Sri Lanka, and now we're going to have 2 best v best games, inter-squad games leading into South Africa. I think it's fair to say we're still targeting July, where we hope that there will be some sort of, I don't know, let's call it long form red ball cricket happening within the region for our test players who aren't playing white ball cricket for West Indies in between that South Africa and Pakistan test series. As to whether it's 3 days, 4 days, first class, as close to first class as we could get, whether, as you say, it's sort of mixed squad, so the best 25 players in Jamaica playing each other across 2 rounds or 3 rounds of 3 or 4 day cricket. The honest answer is we don't know, but that's certainly what we're hoping to have, is some long form red ball cricket to allow our players in between those important test series of the South Africa test matches, which finish the current cycle of the World Test Championship, and then the Pakistan ones, which represent the first matches in the next cycle, which having started so badly this cycle against India at home, we desperately want to start strongly against Pakistan, and we think we're evenly matched, and therefore if our players can prepare really well, we think that we can do well, and therefore start the next edition in a much stronger position than the last, which is obviously our overall aim.
So Toby, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, and in regards to women's cricket, obviously at the moment they're in their second high performance camp of the year. Head coach Courtney Walsh has sort of hinted in the media that there could be some international matches going ahead. Are you able to shed any light on how that's going?
Yeah, I mean, with all these things, I don't know how many draft press releases I've got where we've been really close to announcing 4-day cricket, or we've been close to announcing an international tour, and then at the last minute we've had to change plans. We're probably on version 85 of the women's program, and that's probably only in the last few weeks. They were meant to be in India now, and that idea was that they'd be playing in the IPL exhibition games, or at least some of them. And then we would then play a bilateral series against India, which would have been a reciprocal for the tour that they came here in 2019. And that would have led us to playing in subcontinent conditions, going into the World Cup qualifiers in Sri Lanka. The World Cup qualifiers in Sri Lanka are now going to, we think, take place in December. So we kind of had to readdress the entire plan. We had an away tour pretty much confirmed to replace that World Cup qualifier in end of June, July. That's now unfortunately not going to be possible. So we're looking into other options about opposition, whether we have to host or whether we can still go away. We're then still looking and hopeful to have a tour probably the back end of the summer, August, September, leading into the women's regional tournament. And then also play some preparation games before what we hope will be those qualifiers. And then after the qualifiers, we're still hopeful to have a proper international series before the World Cup, on the basis that we do qualify. And the World Cup's now sort of February, March in New Zealand. So looking at a sort of a tour in January. So can't really announce anything yet, but we're massively focused on that program. The good news is, as you say, the women are back here in Antigua and have been for a few weeks. They've been playing some inter-squad games. We've got about 30 of the players here at the moment, working every day under Courtney Walsh and his team. So at least they're active and they're raring to go, and we're desperate to be able to announce that. And hopefully within the next, I would say sort of maybe week, 2 weeks, if everything goes well, we can announce again, similar to how we have done with the men. If everything goes to plan, then this would be the summer, which hopefully would be really exciting. And one of the things we are looking to do, similar to that New Zealand men's tour, is actually see if for the first time we could actually have some West Indies women A-team matches. We've got 30 of the girls here at the moment. Therefore, wouldn't it be great if we could have a tour that involved not just the 15 or so international players, but also have playing alongside it a West Indies women's A-team tour, because we're starting to get a real crop of good young players coming through, and we think if we can really invest in them and give them competitive cricket around having a taste of international or a level higher than they're currently being playing, and then obviously the women's regional tournament, which is massively important because our selection panel, since they were formed, the separate West Indies women's selection panel, haven't actually seen any cricket being played outside of the international. So, and also we've got the added situation where the T20 Blaze, the T20 tournament that they play every year, the winners of that will go through as our representative to the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham next year. So, I think if everything goes to plan, we're going to have a packed men's team schedule and a really packed women's schedule, and not just for the elite West Indies women, but also that emerging players pool as well, which would be brilliant if we could pull it off.
The Santoki and I were discussing this before you came on, Johnny, and it's I don't know how weird of a question it sounds, but has there been some benefits to? Sounds a weird question. Sorry. Has there been some benefits to COVID West Indies or Cricket West Indies in terms of? So, for example, let me give an example, Johnny. We would never previously. Okay, maybe we would have done, but it wouldn't have been. I question how plausible it would have been. Have had the chance to do a 3-week camp before an international tour, or an international visitors, or a 1 month for the women in Antigua, and part of me feels like that kind of almost high performance scenario, we've almost stumbled on something here, which I know like a normal cricket calendar, non-COVID is chock-a-blocked and there's not that opportunity, generally speaking. But have you uncovered some different approaches in this period of COVID where, like, actually we could streamline things and do things a bit better going forward based on what we've had to experience with COVID? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think probably not from a high performance point of view, because I think with the acquisition of Coolidge Cricket Ground and what Jimmy Adams and his high performance team now, where we've got sort of all those core roles filled. We've got Graham West as our high performance manager. We've got Ayana Cooper as our personal development manager. We've got Chris Brabazon, who I know you've spoken to, as our coach education manager, and Dr. Goulson as our sports science medicine manager, and Floyd Reefer as our sort of head coach of the emerging players and under 19s, 18. Because we're developing that high performance team under Jimmy, and we've got the facility at Coolidge, I think some of that would have happened anyway. And in some respects, actually, some of it's been a bit disruptive because of COVID. But I've always said to you guys, you've got to have a very optimistic and positive view if you work for West Indies cricket. Otherwise, you can get very depressed and frustrated quickly. And we've had a very sort of positive attitude throughout COVID. There are massive positives that have come from it, and even things that fans would perceive as very negative. All taking 50% pay cuts, for example. I think that's been a positive because there are lots of different approaches we could have taken. We could have chosen, easiest decision ever would have been, well, the 120 cricketers that we contract on an annual basis that definitely aren't going to play any regional cricket for the next 6 months, possibly 12 months. Well, we just won't contract them. We'll cut our funding because, there's not enough cricket activity to justify it. We won't go on tour because it's too complicated and risky. And at the moment, the Caribbean has fairly low rates and there's no real obvious international flight routes. So therefore, we just will effectively lock down, save money and repair the balance sheet. But we've taken a completely different approach. And I think that approach speaks to the culture that we're trying to develop here, which is one of, we are a family, we do respect each other, and that from the players to the umpires to the support staff to the administrators to the directors to all of the funding groups, we're all in this together. Let's all take a cut. If we all do it, we can keep the organisation together and protect everyone's jobs. We hoped it would only be for 3 months or even less than 3 months. We did warn and sensitise people it might be for 6, and it ended up being for 6. But I think, having all been back on full pay since January and sitting here now over a year later and still tackling and dealing with COVID, to say that we've not lost a single job under that sort of global pandemic. And then you look at the cricket to think that, have we really set back the careers of any cricketers? probably not, or hopefully not. And in some cases, we've probably been able to give them, as you sort of allude to, development opportunities that may not have existed before now. I think we can be very proud. And even, I mean, the Bangladesh tour was an obvious one. We could say, look, we know because of bubble fatigue and various reasons, players aren't going to go. So let's just call it off. But actually, Jimmy Adams and Roger Harper were very clear to me in every conversation that there are still fantastic development opportunities to go. Players are still going to wear the maroon with pride, and let's give them the opportunity. And that fearless approach and that team went to Bangladesh in that test series after the disappointment of the one-day series and did so well. So I think, we've got that can-do positive approach, and I think it's bearing fruit. And, without being political, I think that cricket-first philosophy that, Ricky Skerritt and Kishore Shallow have sort of adopted has been, a really interesting one for us to fall back on and say, come on, yes, there's millions of reasons why we should say no, but let's try and find a reason to say yes, and let's keep cricket going at whatever level we can, and let's keep our cricketers as active and as evolved as they can be, because medium to long term, that's hopefully going to help our whole cricket move forward.
Santoki, sorry.
I guess the only other pressing question we got on social media was about fans, but I guess from my perspective, looking at it, it's a case of seeing as it goes on, kind of what the situation is in each different island hosting games, I guess.
Yeah, I think we try to be pretty clear, which is, we've said to all the fans, of course, when we're playing cricket, we want you to be in the stands. That is, so obvious that maybe we haven't said it enough. But actually, first and foremost, and it isn't just PR. The safety of our players and support staff, and the responsibility that we have as a professional organisation going to these host countries, asking them to host international cricket under such difficult circumstances when their own, current government workers in ministries of health in particular are so stretched anyway. We do not want to place any undue risk or pressure on people that have already been working under trying circumstances for so long. So we've been very clear to the governments that if they, the ministries of health, say that they are happy to entertain fans in the stands in any way, shape or form, then we would love that to happen. If that means reduced capacities, only certain stands away from the players being open, whether that means they've got to be fully vaccinated or not, then, absolutely we would love to embrace that. But we will not put any pressure on or make any public statements that put any pressure on any government officials to make that decision. And that will rest solely with the government. And if we can do it, great. But certainly our expectation, being brutally honest, is we wouldn't have any fans in the stands all year until, hopefully with St Kitts and the CPL, that there's maybe a way in which vaccinated fans could go into the ground at Warner Park, which would be brilliant and a great way in which we could test it. But look, if the opportunity presents itself beforehand, absolutely we'll take it.
I think thinking of CWI's coffers here, but if we had to have no fans for the remainder of this year, but fans for when England come, then that probably recoups having no fans for the rest of this year. So I would say all systems go to what it can be like when England turn up in 2022.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's if we were to sort of trial it, for one of the better description, fans in the stand during CPL and Warner Park, we could then look to again really test it with Ireland in early January, but then make sure that, as you say, from first ball against England, that we've got every seat in the house absolutely full. Then that would be a brilliant outcome for us. So we've had to be cautious around these things, and we continue to be so. But yeah, if the opportunity presents, and even if in one country we can, in another country we can't, then again, I think we would entertain that. But it's all ultimately about making risk, and certainly I won't be recommending to our board of directors anything on that until we've got a clear mandate from firstly the ministries of health and then our medical team. That would be the process.
Well, you know what, Johnny, as ever, you're nothing if not honest and very clear and transparent. And I think, again, as you said the first time we ever spoke to you on here, that primarily myself and Santoki are fans of West Indies cricket, and we always appreciate the clarity that you and others at Cricket West Indies bring to proceedings. And just want to thank you as ever for coming in for this kind of whistle stop tour on what I call the week that was in West Indies cricket. We're looking forward to what's the first test is July the 10th. Not July, sorry, July.
June the 10th, yeah.
June the 10th against South Africa. So we look forward to that, and what I said at the top, the non-stop summer of cricket in the Caribbean. But Santoki, I'll let you close this one.
Yes, so thank you. As echoing what Mashal said, thank you, Johnny, for giving up your time and being so transparent and honest with your answers and really clarifying a lot of questions which fans have asked us to ask you. So thank you very much for coming on.
Oh, that's an absolute pleasure. So any time you want an update, I'll do my best to give you as much information as I can. And through our media team, I just want to reassure fans, when we're in a position to, at least dot enough I's and cross enough T's and be certain, we will make announcements and share information. And rest assured that we're doing everything we can to transform the organisation on and off the field. And COVID has been an enormous challenge to Cricket West Indies, as it has been for most organisations within the region and around the world. But hopefully we'll come out of this at some point soon for all of us, and we'll be a better organisation on and off the field for it. So keep up the great work that you're doing to keep our Caribbean fans informed and engaged, and hopefully we can all hand over to the players in June and be entertained all the way through to that World Cup, where we're really looking forward to defending the title wherever and whenever that World Cup takes place.
There was a pause at the end there, Johnny. I thought you were about to say where we're going to win, which is why I to say, but it's okay. It's okay. We'll say it for you.
Well, we certainly hope so, and certainly the preparation plans that Jimmy and Phil and Roger have been working on. I think 15 T20 internationals, a CPL, who knows, maybe even an IPL leading into a World Cup. Our players will be very, very, very well prepared, and as defending champions, we're desperate to do well and to fly the flag and to win it for a third time. So let's all hope that we can rally around the team and bring another World Cup home.
Well, like I say, thank you very much for coming on, Johnny. Much appreciated. And I speak for all the fans who thank you for your appearance this week. Ladies and gents, that's been the Rum Shot Diaries, Season 1, Episode 2.